was 115 when we were
Instead
there.
of
You're gonna be
wherever,
online.
I'd rather do that.
or in the,
It was hot,
all
but
right.
it was great. Yeah.
I know it. 20%.
Do what?
Over a 14-day period. Come.
Good evening, and welcome to the Monday, August 10th, Muscatine Community School District Board of Education meeting. We are in City Hall chambers tonight for the first time in what feels like forever with the COVID-19. We are socially distanced, and to be able to communicate with each other during a meeting, we have taken off our masks, but we have also promised each other we're not moving around. So if we do, we'll mask back up to do that, and would ask the same of our audience as well. Madam Secretary, would you take roll for us and determine a quorum, please?
You bet. Director Cooney,
Here.
DeBeat, Draba,
Here.
Finn,
Here.
McCarter,
Here.
Morgan,
Here.
Sure.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. During our quarantine time, we started inviting individuals to do the pledge for us. We've had both students and we've had adult servers of our community that have done this for us, which we greatly appreciate. Tonight we have a recording of two of our speech and debate seniors. We have Kaylee McConaughey and Hannah Pouts, and they are going to lead us in the pledge. And since we are all in a place where we can see each other, I would ask that we all stand, and we're going to watch the video and let them do the pledge for us.
Hi, my name is Kaylee McConaughey, and I will be a senior at the Muscatine High School this year.
My name is Hannah Pouts, and I will also be a senior at the Muscatine High School this year.
Together, we represent the Muscatine Speech and Debate seniors. As freshmen, we qualified in duo at the national stage.
In my sophomore year, I qualified in congressional debate.
In my sophomore year, I qualified in United States extemporaneous speaking.
In my junior year, I qualified in dramatic interpretation.
In my junior year, I qualified in Program of Original Interpretation, POI for short. This season, we hope to qualify with another duo at the national stage. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hi, my name
We thank them for doing that for us as well. That takes us to our Citizens Speak portion of the agenda. This is where if we have someone in the audience that would like to address the board, you're welcome to do so. I would ask that you first state your name and address for the record for our secretary so she's able to capture that information, and that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. As part of board policy, I would also remind our public that during a public meeting, we are not able to respond to those comments, but you are always welcome to connect with board members before or after the meeting. Our email information can always be found online. And it looks like no one is rushing the podium. All right. That takes us to, we have our board targets and goals report, which is, we always keep on our agenda, and I'm going to just read through these because they are on our agenda to help us as board members always keep in front of us what it is that we are striving for. So those goals are: students will graduate prepared for post-secondary options. Muscatine School will utilize resources effectively and equitably, and students will learn in a positive and supportive environment. And that takes us to the agenda item, which has been a hot topic as of late, and that is the Muskie Return to Learn plan. And Clint, I think that your team has an update for us.
So what we want to do is just take you through the work that's happened since our last meeting and the work that's yet ahead, as we really have 2 more weeks until the start of school year. And so you can see just the level of detail and intensity that's happening right now. I know it feels like for all of us from a staff standpoint, we're moving at light speed as we literally move from meeting to meeting to meeting as we talk about this. So from the last time we met, where we kind of finalized, the recommendations, we moved right into communicating those recommendations and gathering input from our parents as to whether they were choosing that online option or the face-to-face hybrid option. because what that is doing is driving our staffing, drives our schedule. So all of those things have been happening as we get closer to the start of the school year. I've been having weekly calls with County Health. Had another one today at 2:30, just as we connect with them, and also other area school districts as we talk about what's happening and kind of looking at the numbers regionally here and across the state. We've been working very closely with community partners as we identify options for childcare and how we'll do that. And most recently, we've spent a lot of time working on internet access and working with partners from the Greater Community Foundation, United Way, Muscatine Power and Water. And essentially, how do we ensure that our students, we're going to provide those devices, but how do we provide that internet access? And so as we've kind of moved forward and developed a model, our last meeting of the group was Friday afternoon. And just as we were finishing that meeting and talking about how we were going to identify students and families, how we were going to filter them through our Kids First process that we already have in place, literally just as we were wrapping up that meeting, an email came through from the state that said, by the way, we have some funds for internet access. So it wasn't all for waste, because what we'll be able to do is we have the structure in place. Those funds won't last forever. We know that we'll need to continue that on as we move forward. So we have the structure in place. But again, it would have been helpful to know maybe a little bit before that. It also, for me, speaks to just the great support that's out there in the community to say, what is it that you need, and we will help you get that. So I think that's been very comforting. But again, working a lot with our staff, with our administrative team. This week we brought in, or this past week, we brought in instructional coaches and spent time with them both at elementary level and secondary level. And then more staff coming in next week and from there. So with that, I really want Joelle to kind of talk through a timeline that you have, and we've got it projected up here as well, just so you can see the types of things that we have planned and how that'll position us for that start of school. And then as we finish that up, we'll just open it up to questions. Again, we're going to continue to bring this back to you. The other thing that I will mention is typically we wouldn't have another second meeting until October, another work session. I would like to add an additional meeting. I would ask that we move that into September, though, because 2 weeks from now is the first day of school. We're going to have a lot going on right then, so I think it'd be good for us to hold that work session in September and then move right into that October 2 sessions as well. So that way, again, we just, as much as we can, keep this work in front of you and continue to communicate out to the community as to where we're at with things. So with that, I'll turn it over to Joelle, who's been doing a great job with all of our team, putting things together and keeping us moving forward. So, Joelle?
All right, so I'm just going to give you a quick overview of some of the things that we've been working on, and I've had a lot of great help. I've definitely not done this by myself. The administrators and Becky and our tech team, we've all just been really working together to make this possible for our teachers. So we started back on July 31st. All of the administrators held meetings with their staff just to go over the Return to Learn plan. We set up a question and answer form so that we could gather feedback as we worked through this process. On August 4th and 5th, we brought in all the instructional coaches at the pre-K 6 level. We brought in administrators, some grade level teachers, some model teachers, and we spent 2 days of really digging into what's called a just-in-time training and unit planning. We watched a lot of modules, we looked through priority standards, and really started developing those first units in ELA and math so that we could work through that for when teachers returned, so we could support their work that they would need to do at the beginning of the year. On August 6th and 7th, we brought in 7th through 12th grade department heads and also instructional coaches and administrators. And during that time, we worked on an overview of the same just-in-time training so that we would have that pre-K-12 continuity and understanding of learning. Then we worked on virtual teaching and what that could look like, and we focused on 4 different areas for virtual teaching, and that was planning, delivering instruction, communication with our parents, and assessment and feedback. And then the junior high and high school spent some time together breaking up in teams, and they broke apart the hybrid model, the virtual teaching model, and some safety things, and they worked through that and put together just some different questions that they had and gave some input so that the administrators at the secondary level could continue to work with building leadership teams on what needed to be done. Then I guess actually it's tomorrow, the 11th and 12th, we are bringing in all of the elementary teachers who are assigned to virtual teaching and the pre-K-12 instructional coaches, and we are going to have Tristan Toll lead us in setting up Google Classrooms, class lists, parent communication, supplies, toolboxes, and all those fun kinds of things so that those teachers are ready to go for the first day of school. And then on the 13th, we will be welcoming our new teachers, and you can see we'll be doing an overview from Mr. Christopher, Jill Borquin from HR, Lynette Clays. We'll be going over some teaching and learning things with our teachers, and then they will have some time to report back to the schools. MEA will be providing a lunch for all of them. And then on the 14th, we will continue with the training, but we'll be allowing those new teachers to be back in the building with their instructional coaches. Becky Witchers has been working on that plan with administrators. Then on the 17th or 18th, the secondary administrators are setting up a night for parents and students to be able to come in and get the materials that they need for those students who will just be doing virtual learning. They will be kind of providing them some basic information, teacher office hours, just so that they keep that contact and that relationship with our students who are online. Then on the 17th, we will be all involved in a teacher quality in-service revolving around teaching with equity, resiliency, and cultural competency. Then on the 18th, it is welcoming back all of our teachers. That's our first day. In the mornings, we have planned staff meetings from 8 to noon where administrators will be working with all of their staff around safety, cleaning, all the questions that they had, answering those, doing some team building and so on. Teachers will then in the afternoon go and work with their departments and grade levels just around processing and working together to start in their around their curriculum areas. On the 19th, we have planned professional development around virtual learning for all teachers. And so we've been working on just really setting up what are those basic things that teachers need to have in place so that they are prepared to teach, whether they're in person or virtual. And then on the 20th and 21st, we're just giving teachers time to process and work in their classrooms. And we will have instructional coaches and administrators and support teachers, model teachers available to help support them with any questions that they may have. So that's kind of a very quick overview of all of the different things that we have in place for supporting teachers.
So just a couple of other items that I'd like to add, and then we'll open it up again. I think it's really important to remember that, and I mentioned this to teachers last week, if our plan looks the same in January that it does today, then we haven't been doing any work, right? It's going to need to continue to evolve and change. We're going to learn things as we go along, things that are working well, things we need to do better, and we'll continue to adjust and modify as we need. And people have heard me say this before. This is not my quote, but just one that I like, and that's the smartest person in the room is the room. So as we've met as an administrative team and started making some initial plans, As instructional coaches came in, they brought in more questions and ideas and more thinking, and that's helped us refine our plan. This week and next week, as teachers come back and we get all of those voices at the table, the plan will continue to get better and better and better. As we hear from you, as we hear from the community,
and that's the smartest person in the room is the room. So as we've met as administrative
we
team,
hadn't thought about yet, and we need to make adjustments. So the plan will change, but it will also help us meet the needs of all students in a better way. The other thing I wanted to mention, again, just as a reminder, as we're requiring masks for all students and staff, that we're providing that. So we do have a supply. We're working with a local provider here and has some backup options should we need to make sure that we have a good supply of masks, of face shields, of everything that they'll need. We've sent out a Google form to teachers because there's some different options that they have, and given their certain needs in their classrooms, they have some different things to choose from, but we are providing those. And then, as we said the last time, we'll evaluate those individual cases on a case-by-case basis, and that's what's happening right now. So I think we're really in a good place there. That will roll into some of our training as well. I also wanted to mention that our model and part of that state structure is based on that 14-day positivity average for the county of Muscatine. And so we are getting that data now from the state through a website. And I can tell you that we're going to monitor that every day. On Friday it was 9%, today it was 8%. I imagine that's going to ebb and flow. But again, when you take a 14-day average, part of what that does is just flatten out those peaks and valleys. So it's going to probably move a little bit slower because of that, but we'll keep a close eye on that. And again, working very closely with county health officials as we monitor that as well. Based on that information, we're still in the right spot with the models that we have. And so we'll continue to move forward on that. I would say, again, based on that structure, the likelihood of closing, moving to full virtual for the district or full virtual for a building, an entire building, is probably going to be a pretty high threshold for us to get to. Classrooms, yes. Small groups of students or staff, yes. That is going to happen, and we'll move very quickly on that. But there is definitely a higher threshold for buildings and for the district. And so, we're going to, again, work closely with county health and monitor and adjust as we move forward. So with that, open it up to questions.
I've got one here for you. When we met last time, you mentioned about, of course, with all the Google Classroom training and that, and I'd asked the question about where do subs fit in on that, making sure they have all that proper. And I know that with the compact time you have here, that would probably be something a little difficult to do, but I'm assuming you have something that may come into play that will help those folks.
So I can tell you all of the administrators are working and have a plan in place for subs, and I know that we've been articulating that, some of our staff members may be subbing. For example, our instructional coaches may be doing some subbing. I know at the high school we are looking at a plan for if a teacher is not able to come in and teach, then we will set something up for those students where the work will still be pushed out to them, and then there might be a para or support person that stays in the room with them, but then the kids can still work on that work even with the teacher being gone. But I do know at the elementary level that they do have plans in place for all the different, obviously we haven't thought of every single solitary situation that can happen, but they've got a lot of different levels of planning in place to cover for subs.
I think that's a great question, Karen. And again, part of what we're talking about for the secondary is essentially creating spaces in the building that will staff with a sub or a paraprofessional. And again, this is the benefit of moving into a Google Classroom is teachers and students, they know what needs to get done. So teachers will send that out through Google Classroom. Kids will report, and they'll get to work, right? And I had that experience in a previous district, and there were times that we didn't get subs. Kids just found a spot to work, and they went to work. And kids ended up liking that better because it's very rare you ever find somebody who's certified in chemistry or somebody who knows Algebra 2, those kind of things. But they need that quiet, dedicated space to work, and so we'll provide that. The benefit of that too is if we can use fewer subs to supervise those kids at the secondary level, it allows us to backfill better at the elementary, where they still need that teacher, they need that adult in the room to help work through the day. So it is it's a good opportune time for us to talk about that and implement that. So they're working on that.
Good, thank you.
Have we talked to our subs and asked if they're going to be available this year? I mean, the ones that we would typically see. How stocked are we with subs for the year?
Jill?
Yeah, we sent out a substitute survey, and I've only heard maybe 2 or 3 of you are not planning to come back. So as far as I can tell, we have the same sub pool minus a couple.
Do we have rough numbers at each level about how many families chose the online option, the remote option only?
We do. I don't have, I'll dig through my stuff on
I
that.
can kind of remember. At the elementary level, I think around 500 students. At the junior high level, was it like 120 some, I think, 130. And then at the high school, it was a few hundred as well. So, I mean, I would say it was around like 900-ish altogether. But are you?
I have overall.
You do. Thank you, Lisa. It's probably going to be higher than what I said.
Virtual learning overall, 1,123. In person, 1,648. Hybrid, 1,488. We still have 489 that have not responded or that we're still working on connecting with them.
Thanks, Lisa.
So for those we haven't heard from, we're planning on them being in person.
Right.
And then we'd adjust from there.
So it's roughly 20%.
Yep.
Roughly. Do we, I see that the element or the secondary are gonna have, when they pick up their devices, when do we know when are the elementary kids gonna get their devices?
So we have been, we're working with those teachers tomorrow and Wednesday, and then the instructional coaches are in the buildings, and we have schedules set up where parents will be able to come in and pick those up. I think, did we decide, Stephanie? Friday. Okay, I
Friday.
couldn't remember what the final date was. So. And they can come in during the day or call for an appointment, and we can get that for them.
And PD for parents?
Right.
Because I think that's kind of probably be the biggest thing, and the sooner that the kids and parents and everybody can log in and even just touch base with somebody saying, hey, I was able to do it the first time, instead of waiting until, the 23rd, I think that would be a nightmare, but if
So
we can set
part of
stuff
what
up.
we're gonna set up is some type of help desk where, whether it's a student or a parent can call in and say, hey, this isn't working, how do I do this? I do know also online, our resources, there are a number of like tutorials, how to do this, how to do that, that people can work through there as well. So kind of multiple levels on that. I'll also say that kids pick it up very quickly, and they teach their parents as much as they need to know on how to do that. So
I would agree with you with the kids. That's why I said parents are PD for parents. Because
one of the other things I should say that we're also doing is because we're in Google Classroom, and Google Classroom is really the communication tool between the teacher and student, that we will have every teacher create a Google site for their class that is really the resource for parents. So all of our many of our teachers are using multiple systems, and there might be other pieces, or they may already have a site set up. We want them to put all of that in that same structured format. They can put their links to those other sites there. So as a parent, I know I go here, I find the teacher, and if I need to break off into another area, I can get there. So it's that kind of one-stop shop for parents to get to that information. Again, because that is one of the challenges moving to Google Classroom is sometimes if you do it too quickly and you don't have those resources, parents kind of get left out of the communication loop a little bit with the classroom.
Thanks, Clint.
Yep.
I have 2 questions. One, just verification. Clint, you mentioned we're talking staff or small groups of students. We're talking this threshold, right? To close a building is going to be pretty high. That is not Muscatine standard, that is a state
That's state.
given.
Yeah.
Okay, so just in case
So-
people are catching this later.
So we would have to, again, to close a building or the district, we go to the, I've got that form here for us. Their structure for return to learn. So we need to be to 15 to 20% or above 20%, and we need to have 10% student absenteeism. And that's when they'll have a conversation with us about closing a school or the district. And again, that threshold for the district is higher than a building.
Okay, thank you. And the second one, in case we have parents or community members who have seen this particular meeting, let's say a year ago, right before school starts, in this agenda that, Joelle, you went through, what's different about the, I mean, we know because we're in it, but for those who are going to watch this maybe later, what is different about this particular back-to-school calendar versus a year ago or 2 years ago? Just so our parents know that.
Yeah. Well, obviously, the safety piece is huge. And I think Mr. Christopher had alluded to, this Maslow's hierarchy and that safety being this foundation. It's really hard for anyone to kind of move into other areas until you know that you are being taken care of and you're safe. And so we understand that and know that. And so our number one thing this year that would be different is that we are really focusing in on that safety piece. And we've really set this up and structured it so that we're addressing that first with staff when they come back. I know tutorials and videos have been made. We have module training that we're going to be doing. We've been setting up those question and answer things way back in July so that, as teachers and staff members are kind of processing through things and they think of something and it's not in that Q&A form, they can put that out there and we can get back to them. And sometimes they've thought of things that we haven't thought of. I'll give an example, a drinking fountain. We said we were going to turn off drinking fountains because that's a safety issue. A couple of teachers in some different buildings said, hey, we don't have a water filling station in our school. And so, Mr. Miller was there on Monday going through all the buildings and setting all that up. So it's just little things that, are big in the whole scheme of putting this all together. And it's been really helpful to have a Q&A form, a lot of safety. I think too, we've probably backed off a little bit on those days for teachers to process. So instead of scheduling a lot of different PD, we've tried to keep it very focused on just what you need to know to get started so that teachers, we know, are coming in and they're, a little nervous, and families. And so we just really want to focus on that as well. So.
I think the other thing, just to follow up on that too, it's a great opportunity to model what we want to see in the classroom. So in having those conversations and planning for this training, what does everyone need to know? What is that base level learning that every staff member needs to know? Let's focus on that. And then using our own staff as we dig into some of these trainings, it's what do you need then from there? So there are more advanced sessions, but again, it's based on what you need, just like we want in the classroom. What's that need to know? Then if you get that, you move into the good to know and the nice to know. So, and again, leveraging our staff to share that learning with other staff, I think is a great thing. I think the other thing that's going to be different this year than previous years is, typically at every district I've been in, you have that back to school with all staff, right? And I think here we call it super in-service. And as much as I don't like to get in front of, 1,000+ people and talk, it is the first time for many of them that they're all back in one place. And there's just that energy, there is that excitement, but we just can't do that this year. And I think rightly so, again, giving teachers as much time as possible to be in their rooms and really thinking about, what do I need to do to be ready for kids? What does my space look like? What changes do I need to make? So we've made those adjustments, and again, I think for this year, that's definitely the right way to go.
And I think also to add to that, teachers have been coming in the classrooms, and as they're, processing through some of these, things, moving furniture and getting things clean, the administrators have been there. They've walked through with some of the teachers coming in, kind of help problem solve. So I think just having that opportunity to really work individually with teachers as they come in around those concerns as well.
Did we get enough staff to opt into the virtual?
We did. At the elementary, we had some staff that, obviously needed to, and then we had some staff that wanted to. We ended up needing a few more extra sections than what we had, and so we sat down and looked at, for example, in one school, they might only have enough students for one in-person section, but they had another, they had 2 teachers. And so the principals went back and talked to those teachers and said, here's the thing, would one of you, like to? And some of them thought about it and, asked good questions. And to be honest, every single teacher I think that we've talked to has said yes, that they're going to do it. So, I want to make sure our teachers feel supported. We're super grateful, that they were willing to do that, because for some of them it's stepping out of their comfort zone a little bit, but we want to make sure that we support them along the way. And it's not, I think when you look at this calendar too, it's not just support before school starts. We know that the support that everyone's going to need is ongoing. And back to what Clint said, what we're starting with right now isn't probably going to look the same as when we get in a month from now. I think teachers will help guide us as we work through what they need.
Okay. And just another question is that, just so the public know, or is aware that the virtual teachers will actually be in the building in a specific classroom, correct? They're not doing this from home.
They do have, so most of the teachers that we've talked to want to be in their classroom teaching, because that's where they have their smart board and their materials and things like that. We do have, different teachers that for different reasons can't come in to the school, or, they're teaching from home works better for their situation. I would say for the most part, all of the teachers are wanting a space to come in and teach from, but there will be a few cases where they may teach from home.
So we had already, that was part of the survey work from the last couple of weeks to identify, because of health reasons, we do have staff that can't come back.
Right.
And would not be safe for them to come back. So we tried to leverage them to help support that virtual learning. Then after we've kind of placed them, that's when we started tapping some teachers on the shoulder, or just saying who would be interested in doing that.
Okay.
And I would say whether they're in person or virtual, all of our learning this year will be together, because we really want to keep, one of the things that's really important is that whether a student is in person or virtual, we want to make sure that their learning progresses together, because at some point they're going to converge, and we don't want there to be inequity, based on what model they choose. And so we will be bringing teachers, whether they're teaching online or in person, together for all of our training this year and support. So.
Thank you. I just thought that was important that the general public is aware of that. So thank you.
Joel, go ahead, Mike.
Do we know when like the paras and the other support staff are going to be reporting back, and are they going to get the same type of training, the safety training and everything else?
Yep.
Is that
So,
the all
yep.
staff one?
Yep, so the paras, their first day will be the first day that teachers are back. So on August 18th, paras will come from 8 to noon and will be a part of the staff meetings. And then back Friday, I have to look at the dates because it all blends together, on the 21st, and they will be going through specific training modules that morning, so they will have all of the same training as our teachers.
I assume that's what all staff meant, but
Yes.
I didn't want to assume. I wanted to
No,
make sure that was
yeah.
correct.
And Joel, you mentioned continue to support teachers in buildings. Do you know what that looks like, what structure, like say 2 weeks in, are we talking like all building meetings, department, what's that look like? Just for parents know what to expect from their teachers.
So we have, we have an early out. We have a 2-hour early out each month, and so during that 2-hour early out, pre-K-12 teachers will all be working together. And so for those 2 hours, departments will be getting together, grade levels will be getting together. And we have teams that plan the week before that for those early out days. And those teams involve teachers and administrators, instructional coaches, and so on. So that learning is already set up K-12 throughout the whole year. In addition to that, administrators have building time allotted for professional learning, and so that they can, just like with kids, if the school staff needs more training in this, then the administrator has flexibility to pull that in for teachers. But the early outs all year are set aside for K-12 learning.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Have we had any pushback from parents about the hybrid model? Like saying, I don't want to go every other day, I want to send my kid every day.
Well, probably Lisa would know more of that. I'm sure there are probably parents out there that
I'm guessing
think
we
that,
probably have. I just don't know. I don't know how we're going to respond to that, or how we've trained. I guess my real concern is how have we trained our building secretaries to address that, or do they address that? Say, here, I want you to contact.
Most of it right now is happening at the building level with administrators, and I would say probably the biggest thing is just questions about, well, I'm supposed to be on A and I'd like to be on B, right? So right now we're just taking all of that information and not making any promises, because we need to be able to balance those numbers out. So as those schedules become more solidified, and then of course it's not just an issue with the high school, because if there are families involved, they may have a junior high student, so we have to look at that balance too, and transportation. So we're tracking all of that. We have said that there may be some kids that need to be there every day. That is mostly due to their IEPs or any other like special needs that would go along with that. Again, that's being evaluated on a case-by-case basis, but just because I want to be there every day doesn't mean I will get that opportunity.
And that you brought up busing, are we comfortable with busing? I mean, is the model going to work out?
As of this morning, we had 1,265 requests for transportation. I hope to have all of those routed by Friday, and then I'll tell you how comfortable I am.
Thanks, Ryan. Good luck with that.
I've got a little, this is more of a statement area than anything else. But I do believe it's important, as we talk about the public need to know, I think sometimes where we stand, or stand as a board, or stand as a member of the board. And I can say that the governor did a heavy hand to us, needless to say, because Clint, how you remarked about the fact that the high threshold and everything that we are required in which to do to have something different happen. And I commend you for everything that we're doing to make sure that we're able to take and hopefully get to a point where we don't have to worry about where that threshold and everything is at. But personally, I have to be able to say, not only from myself, but from people that I've heard in the community, and personally, I feel more comfortable with the fact that if we could take and do, is to have it for about a month where we really do just that virtual you talk so well about, and so that all families and all teachers and all kids really get that rounded on how that is supposed to be able to work. Then we go into the hybrid and the rest of the method area, because we all know that then come September, October, we're going to be in flu season. And so we all know that, you know, as we start as it is, we're going to have a flux of a lot of that stuff going on. And that way then we'll be really ready to go back to that virtual learning the way that, you know, may end up being for it. And everybody's going to feel comfortable with that. But having said all that, that's my thought, that's my wish, but that is different than what the governor has allowed us to do. And so with that, I commend you for all of the work that you are putting in to make this work as best we can possible.
And let me just thank you, Karen, I appreciate that. So what I want to make sure I say is that I don't think our model is all that different than other states. So Minnesota, for instance, is using the same 14-day average. They And ours, I think, starts like 0 to 5 and then 6 to 14 and so on. Their first level is 0 to 9, so it's even a little bit higher, right? I think the difference, though, is that when you get to that decision of closing a building or the district, we're not given the same kind of flexibility. Like if we locally said, hey, I know these are the guidelines, we just feel like for the best sake of our students in our community, we need to go to virtual, and I think that's the difference, right? The structure and some of the data pieces behind it I'm seeing more and more states move to that model. Again, it's just that final decision about how to close a building and the district, and that we're going to work with our county health officials. We're not just gonna randomly make that decision, so, but in this case, then having to, in likelihood, wait for the state to say yay or nay on that, I think is the greater challenge.
Joelle, for parents, can you touch a little bit on some of our some of the other classes that wouldn't necessarily be quite as textbook driven, how they may look? So, and I'm kind of thinking about maybe art, PE, locker rooms, some of the fine arts programs. How will we tackle that at each level?
Right. So I can tell you at the elementary level, is that my microphone? At the elementary level, we will be, the art, music, and PE teacher, actually, they've already been working together and they come up, way better with ideas, but some of the offerings they will be putting on, for the virtual students, different activities and things that they can do at home, because we do really want to watch the screen time. So they may be giving them different things that they can do, outside, or different art projects. They will be just putting lots and lots of different activities and ideas online for students. At the secondary level, they are working through the different offerings. So when we looked at all of the students who had signed up for virtual learning, we looked at all the different electives that they had chosen. And so the high school and junior high principals have been working with their department heads and their leadership teams around what that can look like. Obviously, some of the classes like welding would be a little difficult to do online. And so there are some classes that will just be harder for students. We may have to look at something different that they may be interested in. But for the most part, they were really working hard to be sure that whatever those students had chosen for an elective, that they could provide that for them. So it would be just similar to what core instruction looks like. Those teachers might, get on and give some different activities for students to do. Well, first they would meet with them, but then they would also have activities to do offline as well. And so it just kind of depends on the department and them working together to kind of look at what that would look like.
Okay. So if I'm in PE, I might not have to dress out if I'm at home.
You do not, but you may have some activities that you might have to. So, yeah.
Okay.
It just depends on what they give you.
Let me follow up
Thank
with
you.
Let me follow up with that, because I just saw where there was some folks that are trying to make a special kind of mask or something for the music kids.
Yeah.
How is
Singers.
that supposed to work?
Yeah. Gosh, and I'm gonna forget her name, and I'm so upset.
Teal.
Teal. Yes, I sent her actually an email the other day because I watched her on the news. She did a great job. Yeah, so the music teacher, they are working on so normally, how the masks is, it's really close to your face. And so they've developed these masks that give some space in between your mouth. Right. And so, of course, she did an example of singing. I wish she could have come tonight and showed. It was, amazing what they're doing. And she said that Neil's was able to give them some discount, and they had a ton of community members that were able to work with them. And so, that's just an example of teachers, they come up with way better ideas sometimes than we do. And when they're really passionate about the work that they do, I think it's just really fun to see, what ideas and things they come up with. So
That's my understanding too, that for instruments, the instrument has a mask as well to help cover the air as it's coming out of the instrument. So,
And the player, in some cases as well, the individual will also have a mask that allows a mouthpiece in potentially. Yeah.
And,
Clint, can you-
I know the PE teachers, they were meeting a long time ago already, coming up with different ideas and activities and ways to do that. And that's why we have given a lot of time for departments and grade level teams to work together, because they come up with, great solutions to things, so.
Glenn, can you talk about sports for a little bit? What are the procedures in place? What's going to cause a sport to be canceled? What isn't?
Yeah, and although I don't have all the details on that, I mean, we lived through that with softball and baseball, so some of those procedures have been in place. It's a good reminder. I think that summer season was a good setup to the year. I think I'm probably more concerned about what happens when we get more indoors, like basketball games and things. Not that just being outside is, it helps, but I'm more concerned about that. One of the big things that we are doing is a more concerted effort to do streaming, so that people have ways of watching those games or those competitions and not have to physically be there. So I know Tom has been working on that. So those are the pieces in place. I know from our athletic trainers, I've seen the more information. If you're coming into the training office, you're wearing a mask, we're wearing a mask. So all those procedures are getting, put together as well. But again, that's another area we're going to have to watch closely. I know today they decided Big Ten football wasn't going to happen, and we're seeing more and more of that too. So that'll be an interesting turn of events.
So with baseball, I know it was canceled because of positive test, right? Someone came in contact with the baseball team that had one positive test.
Yeah.
Is that going to be the process for all sports? If
So
a person is...
I think that, again, the way that process worked was we were County Health contacted us and said, we had this positive case, we're going to do the contact tracing, we're going to do the investigation. Based on all their work, they said, here's our recommendations. Because of that investigation, their decision, and we supported that, was to isolate those students and coaches for a period of 14 days, and I think now it's been 10 days. And just the timing of that essentially equated to the end of their season. So sometimes that depends on when it happens, and if things had been a little bit different, it could have been a group of students instead of the whole team, or it could have been a coach instead of again, so it's very unique to every specific situation, and they ask a lot of questions, they ask multiple people, and so they're looking at consistency of what's coming back and what, how long, how prolonged was that exposure, if it's more than 20 minutes or less than 20 minutes, and were they wearing masks or not wearing masks, all that stuff. So that will be the same process.
Same process. Will involve public health for
Yep,
each sport.
absolutely.
And
What
I
about-
think that varies county to county. The county gets to determine the length of the quarantine, because some counties can say it's 2 days or that they don't need to quarantine, and that happened throughout the summer. That was one of there was some pushback on that some teams were done for 14 days, which ended their season. Other ones said, we don't think you need to at all, even though they had positive cases. We're just gonna, so there's not a standard across the state that's set up for that. So I think that will become more unified. I mean, I think it will become more together as the season pushes on. One of the things I think there was a good question, the locker rooms, they didn't have to face locker rooms in baseball and softball. Football, volleyball. Volleyball is going to be inside. Football, you're going to have locker rooms, unless you come up with something else, or you say take your pads home every night or whatever. So,
What about masks and social distancing during practices, high-fiving, all that type of stuff? Or we have policies and procedures in place for that?
Well, I can tell you that we will continue to encourage that. How well that's being enforced is, again, that happens at the coach level, and something Tom also is going to have to continue to follow up on. And if we didn't have, again, a good reminder of what happens when we don't, this summer was, right? And so, and as I've talked with Tom, I said, we need to, continually remind coaches to remind athletes. It just takes one incident, and that can end the season, and we don't want that. So the more that we can socially distance, wear those masks when we can. Again, hard to do when you're playing a football game, and, it's, inside there, it's 7-on-7, full contact all the time. So, those will be challenges for sure.
Thanks.
And our
Can I ask-
athletics are following the guidelines from the Boys
Yep.
Association and the Girls Union, correct?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Clint, you mentioned masks, just what we're talking about, and face shields, and the district is providing. We know this is more for students, I know, and staff may have an issue, a certain situation too, but if a parent has a student with a need, instead of a mask needing a face shield, who do they go to? Who do they call? Do they call the district? Do they call their building? What does that look like, and how do they make sure that they get what they need?
I would say that conversation starts with the building and the building principal. And then, again, every situation is unique. It may require additional staff. It may be specialized services that are having that conversation. And it may end up here at the district office as well, where we're talking about that. So, and again, we have some different options for masks and face shields, and just depending on that situation, we'll do the best we can. If a student, so one of the things we have talked about, if a student for some reason cannot wear a mask, so what we've been really clear on is when we can't socially distance, we're going to wear masks. So if that student isn't wearing a mask, they will always have to be socially distanced from everyone else, which means transition time, small group work, everything where their position is in the class, we'll have to make sure that they're socially distanced at all time.
Great, thank you.
We had some great masks that were used at the graduation ceremony. I loved it. And do we have more of those? Is that the type of mask that we are handing out, or?
So right now, I mean, we had a specific number, and it was a specific night. And so
I would be willing to buy more of those. Really
so
like
that's why what we're looking at are the disposable masks. That doesn't mean, so again, keep in mind, disposable mask doesn't mean I wear it once and throw it away, right? You can use it multiple times, but again, if they drop it, we got to make sure we have another one. So we have to think about, students using multiple masks and over the course of a longer period of time. So just from a cost-effective standpoint, I know there's been some conversation, well, what if you go with a cloth mask and you wash them every night? Well, then you've got the cost of, somebody's got to wash those, and somebody, and then you've got some expenses in that too, so.
Well, I just figured I'd have one that said Monday through Sunday on it, so then I just knew each day what I had to wear,
It is interesting as we talk through these challenges and all the things that you all have so carefully planned for and the questions that we have, and yet there's a huge element of the things that we all do when we disperse from each other that dramatically impact each other. So literally all the choices that we all make every single day, it will be true of our students, it will be true of our parents, it will be true of our staff. We will have an impact on each other. And however you feel about that, if we've ever had a time to really be responsible to each other, to me it feels like that time is now. So while it's hard to not high five and hug people or greet them, it's even the choices you make outside of the walls of the district building, I think, which is hard. It's hard, and it's the first time I can ever think of that we truly have had something that there's a huge element this is outside of our control. But we work together, we can make great strides. So, any other questions for the team?
And I would just like to, close a little bit with, we believe that face-to-face is the best learning environment possible for our kids, and that is always the goal. I think it's an important reminder that virtual full online for teachers is really hard to do. It's harder than being there in person. So that's not an easy decision to make. Now, again, we need to provide that for those families, and we have staff that need to do that, but that is not an easy task. And I also want to remind people that even before all this occurred, as we've had virtual high schools in place across states all across this country, the failure rate of online courses, of full online courses, was 50% or higher. And that's because kids still need a human connection. They need somebody who's checking in on them. And that's, as I feel very confident in the model that we've put together, that our teachers, as they're working with students, they're making those contacts, they're following up. We're looking at our processes and procedures just the way we would if they were in school. Haven't heard from them in a while, they're not engaging, or they're not getting work done, what's going on? There's that kind of that student support team that's pulling together. That's going to mean at some point, if we're not hearing from them, there's going to be follow-up calls. They're maybe out knocking on the door saying, what's going on? That's what's going to make sure that our kids are successful. So again, this isn't easy stuff, but we've got a great team across the district, and a lot of people putting in a ton of time to ensure this goes as well as it possibly can.
Clint, speaking of failing, whether virtual, what happens if that is the case and we're not able? Are they going to be pulled back into a classroom, or will
So
they?
those are, again, that's part of that process. So they're not just thrown out there and said good luck, right? They're going to go through that same process, and in that evaluation, we, with the parents or with the guardians, it might be, hey, maybe you need to come back face to face, and we can make that decision.
And then from that same standpoint, try to say it correctly, when you talk about kid that does not want to necessarily wear the mask and where they have to be, if that poses then a problem or keeps posing a problem, they would then perhaps maybe look at, is it better for them to go to a virtual model?
I think we always have that flexibility. I think the hardest piece is that it really, as we start to see large numbers moving, it affects staffing, and that's where it gets a little bit tricky. So that's why we've asked parents, when you make this decision, you're committing to a semester so that we can dedicate staff to this. Now, we do know there'll be cases where, because of the student need, they may need to come back face to face, and so those numbers may dwindle, and we're going to have to monitor that. That may, cause us to shift some things around and have to bump a staff member back, and we're just going to monitor that very closely, and again, do the very best we can for our students and for our staff.
All right. Thank you, all of you, for all the time and effort on this and for the update. And I am sure that's not the last time we're going to talk about it either. So we'll look for more information after August 24th. Next on our agenda are our action possible items. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of those items unless a director so requests, in which the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. Those items are minutes, employment recommendations, bills and claims, special education contracts, student teaching agreements, food service vendor contracts, 2021 school fees, and memorandum of understanding with MCC. What are the wishes of the board?
With the resignations that we have, do we need to pull those out like we have in the past and recommend, I guess, do we still need to pull them out, I guess, like we did in the past?
Yes.
All right, so I'll make a motion to pull the two teacher resignations out and vote on those separately.
And that is Lanning.
Sarah Lanning and Deb Wiskowski.
Wazowski? Okay.
Wiskowski.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda, pulling out two of the resignations as presented. Is there any discussion?
Do we know if, and maybe it's my fault that I didn't look to see what Lanning's and Debbie's circumstances were. Are they even in I'm pretty sure that one of them's already in California, so.
That is correct.
So when we get to that, since the motion is on the table to pull those out, we can talk about that. Is there any other discussion, though?
I do have 3 resignations on here.
Yeah.
But I think there were
The other one's
2 that were in
Instructional
question,
coach.
correct?
Yeah, the other one's an instructional coach, they're still in,
Okay,
so.
that works for me, just double
I mean,
checking.
would you rather have us pull that one out also? or-
I think we're fine with the 2 that we have. We can do all 3. I would have slightly different recommendations in those individuals.
Okay. I would also add, we have a little bit bigger list this evening in our consent agenda, but they are items that, just for the public's knowledge, this time of year are still considered pretty standard for us as well, hence why that list might look a little bit longer.
Madam President, is the motion to approve the consent agenda, but accept to pull those 2 out, correct?
Correct, the two resignations,
Thank you.
Lanning and Wazowski,
Zalowski.
Debbie, I'll go by her first name so that I don't slaughter her last name again. Okay? All right, all those in favor of the consent agenda minus the 2 resignation letters, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. All right. So we have 2 resignations then that we need to deal with, and I think, Clint, you have some recommendations.
Yep. So for the first one with Sarah Lanning, my recommendation would be to deny that. Again, I think some of that that resignation is based on safety and feeling comfortable given the COVID situation. I know that Jill Borkwin worked very closely with her we do have online options. That's a really tough position. Math at the high school, we're already down a teacher there, and this one really hurts us. And it's going to make it difficult as we start the year. Knowing that, the letter was submitted anyway. So what happens in that case is we follow up with the Board of Educational Examiners because of the breach of contract.
And when was Sarah's, that resignation came in way past the date, and a new contract had already been
Correct.
signed, correct? Okay.
So we're going to do them one at a time.
Okay. What are the wishes of the board with Sarah Lanning?
I'll move. I'm trying to figure out how to move it.
That's what
I'm
I
trying
was
to figure
trying
out what
think
to
of.
say to move it. Move to deny, is that the word we're looking for?
Or not accept?
Or not accept?
Not
or-
accept the
Okay, not accept the letter of resignation.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to not accept the resignation of Sarah Lanning. Is there any discussion? If I understand correctly, we are not expecting that she will be teaching this year.
We're still going to have to find a replacement.
Okay.
And we are pursuing finding replacements. And given the late time of the year and all of the other factors this year, that's been a challenge. And so part of that right now is if we have any teachers with math certifications, so if they're an instructional coach, if they're somewhere else, we may be pulling them back in to help cover sections and do the best we can to make that work.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion on the floor then to not accept the resignation of Sarah Lanning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. Then the second one that we have is the special education Strat 2 position, which is Debbie.
So my recommendation is to accept that. You do not need to accept that with finding a suitable replacement. This is a licensing issue with this teacher prior to being a teacher in our district with the Board of Educational Examiners, that she is not able to teach for us this year. And so we are, again, finding a replacement, but we need to accept this and we will find that replacement.
What are the wishes of the board?
I make a motion to.
accept Debbie's resignation.
And Aaron, would you like to second that?
Sure.
It has been moved and seconded to accept the resignation for the special education Strat 2 position from Debbie. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. Look at that, we just went through a whole part of our agenda with all of that. So, that takes us to item J, which starts with approve the 2020-21 compliance coordinators. And Jill, I understand you get the next several letters on the agenda.
Yes, good evening, thank you. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about Title IX. There have been a lot of changes in that law, and Title IX is a civil rights law that was passed as part of the Education Amendments of 1972. The law protects people from discrimination based on sex in education programs or activities that receive federal financial assistance. And again, the law has changed, and it now includes sexual harassment and sexual abuse, and it goes into effect August 14th. So the definition of sexual harassment under Title IX is any quid pro quo by a school's employee, that's a this for that situation. Unwelcome conduct that a reasonable person would find so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that it denies a person equal education access. And 3, any instance of sexual assault, dating violence, domestic violence, or stalking. So the conduct for any complaint that we might receive must occur in educational programs or activities, but there is no longer an on-off campus rule. This means that the district would need to follow the procedure if a complaint were received for an incident that occurred, for example, at an away game or an away athletic game or activity. And that means that geography no longer plays a part. So formally, the incident needed to take place, in my understanding, on Muscatine school grounds. That's no longer the case when this new law goes into effect. All employees must now be trained to report sexual harassment based on actual knowledge or any time an employee witnesses, hears about, receives a written or verbal complaint, or by any other means. This requirement is applicable to incidents involving students and or employees, so it's both. Complaints should be reported to the Title IX coordinator, the building principal, a direct supervisor, or any other administrator, and retaliation is prohibited by law. The district is required to have a Title IX policy, and specific language about Title IX is being added to existing policies. Policies for sexual harassment, misconduct, anti-bullying, equal employment, equal education, as well as updating student handbooks and employee handbooks. Also, a Title IX procedure manual must be created and must be posted on the district's website. The district is also required to designate and train individuals for the following roles and positions. Title IX coordinator. We are proposing to be the HR director and the athletic director as the deputy Title IX coordinator. Title IX investigators, we're proposing to be the principals. A Title IX decision maker would be the executive director of teaching and learning. And Title IX appeal decision maker to be the superintendent. So that is the reason for all of the items. The next few items on the agenda is to update policies based on law.
So we don't really have a choice.
You don't really have a choice.
Not that any of that is a bad thing, but the reality is.
And part of it, again, with case law and legislation, you start making those changes, and then you have to go back through all those policies and make sure all that language aligns. And these pieces are all out through, as they should be, in a lot of our policies and handbooks and procedures. So it's just aligning all of those together.
Jill, can you clarify for me? Because all right, so you said the change really was now that it's not just on campus, it's off campus. But you gave an example of an away game. Would it be, what if it happened at McDonald's that wasn't school related? Does it still need to be school related so that the school becomes involved, or does it, the school's involved no matter where it happens?
It's a really good question, but in the webinars I've attended, I believe if it happened at McDonald's, it would still be a complaint we would have to follow up on.
Okay.
So we have training in place for all employees coming up here.
Okay. And then just, Lisa, there's a couple, I don't know who, the links that are in, it's the same policy, under M, I think is one of the links.
Is it not working?
It took me to the Jefferson page, like what's for sale at Jefferson. So,
Mine are working. I don't understand.
maybe it's my computer, I don't know.
We'll get you some professional
All
development.
right.
How's that?
Well, I just click on the link.
You mean maybe one of your children could help you?
All of my children can help me.
I
If
kind
they-
of believe you.
We'll solve it. All right. If it works for you, then that's great.
All right, so what are the wishes of the board? Jill has just walked us through letter J through Q, essentially, correct?
Correct.
Because again, one, the changes that we're required to make by law now touch all of these policies and documents, because traditionally we would also read through a policy, the review would be 3 times as a board before we would approve, but since it is a change by law, we're gonna supersede the 3 readings. We wouldn't have time for that anyway to meet our deadline. So my first question to the board is, do you want to take all of them in one foul swoop, or do you want to do them individually? And whomever would like to make the motion can lead the bus, so to speak, on that one.
I was going to make a motion to approve J through Q.
Love it.
I second that.
There's a motion made to approve J through Q. There is a second. Is there any discussion or questions for Jill?
The only comment I'll make is I appreciate this, but we can't legislate morality. And so I think the training, that's the biggest issue, right? Is to make sure that if you see something, say something.
Yep.
I mean, not for staff too, especially when our kids are involved. You gotta say something.
All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. Jill, thank you. That takes us to our discussion and information portion of our agenda. And our first item under that section is FY21 Early Retirement Incentive.
So, yeah, it's my understanding, over the past several years, we've offered an early retirement incentive. As part of that process, this would be the meeting where we would discuss that, and I believe it comes back, should you wish, in September for approval. Again, my understanding has been that retirement incentive has in the past been $50,000 over 5 years. That is applied to essentially a health retirement account that pays for their portion of health insurance from the district. So with that, Tom, did I capture all that pretty well?
Yeah, 50,000, they know this, I think 50,000 was the max. It's a calculation based on years of service.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, there's a formula for that, it's up to
That
50,000.
Most teachers qualify for the maximum when they retire.
And I would say from my standpoint, knowing that our budgets are not going to get any better, this year could be even more problematic just because we've had, students open enroll to the Iowa Virtual High School and other places just due to COVID. We know the long-term funding from the state may not be where we had hoped it would be over the next few years, so I think the more ways we can find ways to save money would be preferred, and certainly this has helped offset some of those over the past few years.
How many people did we have go for the virtual state?
I would have to look back at that. We can get you that number. I know we've had some that have chosen that, though. And I think,
Was that from, they didn't necessarily have the knowledge or comfort zone on what we were doing?
I think part of that was, I would say, you know, what I heard or what Lisa heard in having those conversations was there was a feeling that that's been around for a long time. So they, you know, they really have, you know, a solid program. Again, that's a perspective, and
We're also requiring our students to check in with teachers at a certain time during the day. I mean, it's a school day, and Iowa Virtual Academy and the other Iowa Connections Academy, I don't believe they have that requirement. If they do, it's really loose, and like, so if you're a working family, a working parent, the children can work on their schooling or online during the evening, weekend hours, that sort of thing. So, I mean, like Clint alluded to earlier, our online version really is, we're trying to mimic, you know, that connection with teachers and students, which is very important. And I'm not certain if they actually get that in a...
Sure, and because the other part of it is that they really understood that money was no longer then gonna be with us, right? You know, so that is a little hard pill to swallow, I guess.
I hear you.
Thank you.
Tom, how many teachers on average do we get to take that early retirement?
Geez.
Do we have any idea? I
remember?
mean, I hate to put you on a spot like that, but
I'd say total people between employees between 15 and 20. Last year we had 6 teachers and 6 hour.
okay. And that's, yeah, that early retirement is offered to all staff,
It has been.
for certified, non-certified.
If they meet the
Okay, if they meet the eligibility, correct, okay.
Tom, how are the costs of the program? And we do this every year, we say it's a savings, but we keep adding costs to these benefits every year, right? We add upwards of $50,000 per person, so where are we at with
Right.
it?
As far as, what do you mean the cost?
I mean, ongoing each year, right? It's costing us for all the people that are opting into it?
Yes, there's a cost that's divided over 5 years, right? And that's
Mhm.
coming out of the management fund, so.
Is it growing? Is it staying the same?
I believe we had a large drop-off at the end of last fiscal year. There were several that dropped off, so what I'm trying to say is it does even out, but when you have just depends on how many people take the incentive program and how many have dropped off from the, you know, going through the 5-year process. So, you know, I don't know those numbers right off the top of my head, but we certainly can report those, you know, next month of that.
That's fine. We've done it every year, I think, since I've been on the board, and so there's got to be a cost to this, and some expectation by the staff that it will continue as well, and I think we just need to be careful about that. I think we're also talking about needing substitutes and you don't know how many teachers we're going to need, so I don't know. I like it as a benefit for the people that can do it, but it feels like we have to be financially responsible with it as well. And if it's a net savings overall, that's fine, but we continue to do it each year. I find it hard that we're paying this extra money and it's netting out to be, I know it's different funds, I know it's different accounts, but I think it'd be nice to understand what the trend is in it.
Yeah, so typically, the last time I figured the savings, of course, it all depends on if you're replacing somebody or you're not. If you're replacing somebody, there's a basically $25,000 savings if we replace that teacher, assuming that we're replacing them with a first-year teacher. Sometimes we can't do that. So, and then the cost for that next year would be $10,000. So, that's kind of my estimate of the savings for a certified staff member.
Assuming that person would not have retired.
Assuming what?
That they would not have retired without the incentive.
Right.
And that's including talking about benefits per person,
That would
correct?
be including salary and benefits.
Yes, because we're obviously not paying benefits to that person when they're retired, except for you could be going towards insurance, but we're not doing any kind of annuity or anything like that for that person then, are we?
Okay, so the $25,000 savings that I was using includes salary and benefits. Okay. And then what was the second part of that question about?
Well, I know that the $50,000 can go to a health savings account
Right.
or into
An
insurance. Or an insurance, yeah,
Right.
annuity for the insurance for the district, if
Right.
they stayed with insurance. But I know that we also offer an option for teachers to get an annuity, and that, we don't contribute to that anymore.
So you're talking about teachers, right, and a few years ago, any new teachers hired, we don't pay that annuity.
Okay.
That is correct.
But the ones that are gonna retire wouldn't be new teachers.
Yeah, they would be the ones that have the annuity.
Right, so there's a savings there
Yep.
also.
Mhm.
Jill, do you have any idea how many individuals would be eligible this year?
And that's total staff, not just certified.
Sure.
So we're not actually doing anything tonight, we're just more informational, and then it's next month, and we would look at what we need to.
So I think it's important for us to know if that's something you're still interested in. We've got more work to do in terms of that. And I've been asking Tom those same questions about what is that. Again, in my previous experience, there was kind of a break even, like in order to make this work, we needed 20 staff to take advantage of this. As you look at what you're paying out front versus what your savings in order to get to all those pieces. So we'll spend some time doing that and lay out that recommendation based on the finances. It's gotta be a savings, otherwise we're not gonna do that.
The timeline doesn't have to be what it has been the last several years. That's just the decision we made, just so that we would know by, say, winter break, how many teachers would be taking, or how many staff would be taking early retirement. But, I mean, you do have to offer X amount of days for somebody to sign the paper and then decide to back out. So you could really, doesn't have to be in September, but that's just what we've been doing.
So Tom, this could be with this whole COVID thing and staffing for online or hybrid, this could be something we decide in February?
You could. Mhm.
Just knowing what it looks like in the spring to kind of, because I think that too, I mean, how many teachers is there a teacher shortage in general? Right, depending on what topic we're talking about, we're talking special education or just different things. Aaron, I'm with you that we have to find the savings, but I'm thinking in this moment in time, I think we've got to be very careful too that we don't find ourselves missing teachers and needing teachers, just period.
Because you already mentioned about instructional coaches and everything that may have to step up to the plate. And so that's a
It is a
concern.
great benefit, don't get me wrong, but I'm thinking just in this, right, as we sit this year, last year's a completely different conversation.
And obviously, nothing has changed with figuring out what our funding will be for the following year. And as you know, October 1st of this year is, it could look a lot different than it has in the past. And because of COVID-19, maybe we won't have, we'll have a larger decrease in enrollment or something, so.
I just think with where budgets are going to head in the next several years, we need to be careful. I know this switches from one fund to the other, and that helps us, but we have to be careful in spending any of those dollars, I think, to incentivize things like this. And what our need will be, we don't know. So.
Well, it becomes a difference between a benefit and an incentive, right? I mean, I think that's the conversation I'm hearing too. Okay. So we would like more information. Is that a fair statement at our next meeting? Okay. Any other comments or questions on early retirement? The next item is policy 503.08, student complaints and grievances. This is the first reading, so you'll see this a couple more times. If you have anything specific that you would like to see changed, corrected, etc., I think we've always ask that you get that information to Lisa. She'll make sure that it's distributed to the board at the next, for its second reading. That takes us to our June financials. Tom, you're on.
So, sure. In the, in the board book then are the June financials. The first page is our cash balances at the end of June by financial institution and also by fund. Okay, the second page is our revenue and expenditure summary, and if you notice, I did put cash basis, and this is just, you know, we all know June 30th is the end of our fiscal year, so this is we report on cash basis every month. This is the June cash basis preliminary report. Probably next month will be around September 15th is our annual reports due, so we should be pretty close to having a June financial report that is pretty what we're going to report to the state, I guess. So cash basis June report, and there is a typo there on the bottom one. That is the June 30th of 2019 comparison, in case you want to compare last June to this June. And then the third page is our expenditures to published budget, and I've mentioned this before. The 4 functional categories are listed on the left-hand side. Facilities acquisition and construction and AEA flow-through are the 4th category. I just divide them out because the AEA flow-through is a set amount, and we will be over our published budget. It'll be a comment in our audit for non-compliance, but we know going forward we'll be able to monitor this and be able to amend our budget in the future so we don't have that issue. The next 2 pages are just our general fund revenue by source and expenditures. So through the month of June, cash basis, obviously we are pretty much received all of our local and state revenue. Federal revenue, we do for the most part have to expend that before we get reimbursed, which obviously, you know, between July 1st and August 31st, we'll be capturing all that revenue that is supposed to be related to last fiscal year, as well as those expenditures.
Tom, real quick,
Yeah.
on that general fund revenue, property
Yeah.
taxes, we had a budget of 14.7. and
Yeah,
we came in
so
at 14.2.
we were, because of the property tax delay the governor made, you know, I did look in July, and we received a few $100,000 more in revenue this July compared to last July, so we will be getting more revenue that we'll be recognizing, more property tax revenue in July and probably August, because I believe the date was July 31st was the date, so we'd get that then from the county in August, so.
So we think that 14.7,
Yeah.
we'll get back to that. It'll just come in July and August.
Yep. And then, so again, looking at our expenditures and revenues, obviously percentage-wise, we're right there for June. So, you know, we'll see a little bit difference in expenditures next month because of all the fun accounting things that we have to do. So that is my June report. It's a little bit different. Guys looking at me doing this. Nobody was heckling me back here, were they? So
I like this because I can see everybody easier. What questions do you have for Tom? All right.
thank you.
You're off the hook, Tom. Thank you. That takes us to announcements and meetings of upcoming events that we have. So we have a long list. Let me walk through these. August 11th, Tuesday, August 11th, tomorrow, Superintendent Christopher and myself will be on the Hy-Vee Tony Tone show to discuss the Muskie Return to Learn plan at 8:30 a.m. So if you all want to tune in to Hy-Vee's Facebook page at 8:30, or you can catch it later, that's where we'll be. And you were, Clint, you were on 2 weeks ago, is that right?
Yep.
So this really is perfect timing because we hadn't quite launched or announced our plan. And you answered some questions for Tony, and I think it was great for the community to hear that. And so this will be a great follow-up. Timing's perfect on this. August 11th, also tomorrow, the Riverbend Mobile Food Pantry will be at 2900 Mulberry at the Administration Center. That'll be from 4:30 to 6. And we will follow all the guidelines that we have previously done. So it's a drive-through service. And nobody's shaking their head, I'm not right. So we're still doing the same manner that will be, volunteers will be masked and handing out bags as you drive through. And I think if you are still in need, if you're wanting to volunteer, Lisa, do we have any spots open?
I'll check.
Okay, so if you do, contact Lisa for that. Then we head into the list really that Joelle presented. So August 13th and 14th is new teacher in service. Then we head to August 17th through the 21st, which is teacher in service. And then that takes us to the big awaited day of August 24th, which will be our first day of school for grades pre-K through 7 and 9. Our freshmen for New Muskie Day will be for grade 7 and for 9. And then August 25th everybody will be in attendance. That day is the first day. And then quickly we head into Labor Day. We have September 7th, and then we will find ourselves back here on September 14th for our regular board meeting. And don't forget, we talked about we'll have a planning meeting in September and a planning meeting in October. And I'm sure if anybody needs those exact dates, Lisa will get those out to us so that we save those dates to be together in conversation. It's a busy it's a busy August, and it felt like it would take forever to get to the first day of school, and we're almost there. So that is exciting. And the best part is we know exactly when the last day of school is going to be this year. There's no guessing. With snow days, we don't have to worry about that, so there you go. Everybody can plan for that. Any other announcements for the good of the cause? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'm going to assume no one has any discussion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you, everyone.